Are you wondering if you've saved enough into your pension, or how you're doing compared with other people your age, or how much you should even be saving for retirement? I mean, we all know we should be saving for the future, but whether we're on track is another matter altogether. Hello, I'm Gary, and I'm here with Moneyfarm today to help get to the bottom of this for you. Let's dive in. Let's start by looking at the average UK pension pots. Helpfully, the Office for National Statistics has broken this down for us by age group, so you can get a feel for how you're doing compared with others at a similar life stage to you. So, the average pension for people in the 25 to 34-year-old age bracket is £18,800. This rises to £39,500 for those between the ages of 34 and 44, and then rises again to £80,000 for those between the ages of 45 and 54. And by the time people reach 55 to 64, the average pension pot has grown to £137,800. If you're behind, then I've got some tips which I'll get onto a bit later to help you turbocharge your pension. On the other hand, if you're breathing a sigh of relief, I don't want to rain on your parade, but the consensus is that most of us aren't saving enough for retirement. So don't just benchmark yourself against these average numbers. The thing is, pensions and retirement have changed massively over the past few decades, and it's definitely tougher now than it used to be. Remember those old cliches of someone in their 60s heading out of the office with a carriage clock under one arm and a life of golf ahead of them. That was the era of final salary pensions, when you'd get a guaranteed portion of your salary paid out for the rest of your life. But those days are well gone for most of us, and instead, the reality is very different. We're now the ones who have to work out how much we'll need to live on in retirement, and then make sure we're putting enough into our pensions during our working lives so that we don't run out of money in the future. And of course, we're having to do this whilst also attempting to keep up with today's spiraling costs and contending with challenges like rising life expectancies. They've shot up over the past few decades, which is great news, but does also mean that our hard-saved retirement funds may have to keep us going for 30 years or more. Okay, so we know how much people of various age groups have saved into their pensions on average, but how much will we actually need for retirement? Of course, the challenge is that this is the ultimate how long is a piece of string question. Humans don't come with end dates, so we've no idea how long we'll live or whether we'll be up for working into our 70s or desperate to pack it all in earlier. Then there's things to consider like where we'll live and the kind of lifestyle we'll want, which will have a huge impact on the money we'll need. And that's before we even get on to those big unknowns. What life's even going to look like 30 or 40 years from now? I mean, think about it. People planning their retirement in the 80s weren't exactly thinking, I'll need money for Netflix, a new iPhone, and a couple of Deliveroos a week. Luckily, there are some numbers to help guide us. They come from an organization called Pensions UK, and they're used by the pensions industry. Pensions UK have worked out how much a basic, moderate, and comfortable lifestyle will cost us a year in retirement. And they've done this for 1 and 2 person households. The minimum amount is £13,400 for a 1-person household and £21,600 for a 2-person household, which would cover the basics with a little bit left over for fun. For a moderate lifestyle, this jumps up to £31,700 for a 1-person household and £43,900 for 2. And then, if you're going for comfort, it's £43,900 a year for 1 person and £60,600 for 2. Now, there are some assumptions behind this. For example, you've paid off a mortgage, are receiving the full state pension, and will convert your pension savings into an annuity. But it's helpful nonetheless, and it leads us to the next logical question. How big a pension pot do I need in order to fund my moderate or comfortable lifestyle every year for the rest of my days? Well, Pensions UK have answered that as well. For a one-person household wanting that moderate £31,700 a year lifestyle, you're looking at a pension pot of £330,000 to £490,000. Two-person households would need £165,000 to £250,000 each to achieve their £43,900 a year moderate lifestyle. And for that comfortable lifestyle of £43,900, a one-person household needs a big old pension pot of £540,000 to £800,000. And for a two-person household, it's £300,000 to £460,000 each to get to £60,600. These are big numbers, but the important thing to be aware of is that you don't need to do all of this yourself. First, if you're employed, your employer will pay into your pension alongside you, so make the most of this. Second, we get big tax breaks on pensions here in the UK, so taking advantage of these can really help turbocharge your pension. This is how it works in general. If you're a basic rate taxpayer and you put £80 into a pension, the government will top it up so you end up with £100 in your pension. If you put in £800, it will get topped up to £1,000. In other words, you get 20% tax relief. Higher rate taxpayers can claim another 20% back through a self-assessment tax return, so 40% in total, and additional rate taxpayers 25%, meaning a total of 45%. Now, there are limits to this tax relief, and these depend on individual circumstances, so make sure you're aware of them. And of course, these tax benefits may change in the future, but hopefully you can see now that all this will help your pension pot grow. And then there's compounding to take into account. You've probably heard people say that the earlier you start saving for retirement, the better. And for the most part, this is because of compounding, which is where money grows, and then that growth starts to grow itself. It starts small, but over time can build and build, like a snowball getting bigger as it rolls down a hill. Here's an example. You put £100 into an investment account when you're 25, and then every month until you're 65, you add £250 to the account. Over these 40 years, you will have contributed £120,000 from your own pocket. But with average investment returns of 5% a year, your investment pot could grow to around £360,000. The big extra slice on top of what you put in is driven by compounding, and this can make all the difference to the size of a pension pot over time. Now, this example doesn't factor in all the moving parts that come with pensions, or that returns aren't guaranteed because investments can go down as well as up. It's just an illustration to show you how compounding can help over time. Okay, so we've talked about the UK average pension pot by age, so you can see where you are compared with others. We've looked at examples of the annual cost of retirement and what size pension pot is needed to fund that. And we've looked at how employer contributions, tax breaks, and compounding can all play a part in growing pension pots alongside money we put in. So now you need to think about all of this in relation to you and how much you need to save to get the retirement you want. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to use an online pension calculator. There are plenty around. For example, there's a free one on the Moneyfarm website. It asks you questions like how old you are, how much you've got in your pensions already, how much you're planning to put in, what your employer puts in, when you want to retire, and what kind of yearly income you want in retirement. And then it shows you if your numbers stack up or if you need to up the amount you're paying in or make other adjustments like retiring later or reducing your planned retirement income. You can play around with the numbers to help get a real sense of what you need to do, and it will also help you see that even small extra amounts can make a big difference over time. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and have a look at the description where you'll find more on Moneyfarm and how to invest. Bye!